What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Surf and Sales Podcast. I'm Scott Leese here with my good friend Richard Harris, and we are brought to you today and all of October by Gong, Lead 411, Perception Predict, and
Find them.
Find them. That's the brand new one that just snuck in there. Thank you, Richard.
Yep.
I'm really excited today to talk to my new friend and sponsor of Thursday Night Sales and COO of Aspireship, Christine Rogers. Welcome to the show, Christine.
Thank you. This is going to be so fun. I'm anxious to hear all these good questions you're going to pepper me with.
Well, I don't want you to get your hopes up too high because the first thing that I'm thinking right now is like, this is the first time that I feel like I've been on Zoom with you where you're not snacking on something and eating. You're like famous, Richard, for basically just eating your dinner in the middle of Thursday Night Sales.
That's right. You're drinking your dinner. You're tequila your way through dinner.
That's fair. She's doing it healthier than I am. That's true.
Yeah. Well, he's kind of deserting. He's tequila dessert. I mean, that's deserting, right?
Yeah.
You're fancy tequila.
That's right.
Christine, are you in Austin also?
No, I'm in Scottsdale, Arizona. That's where we're based out of.
I just read where you guys had 145 days this year over 100 degrees.
Yes, I know.
It's ridiculous.
I know. And I'm wearing long sleeves today because it's freezing in here. So it's like, I don't know, 70 degrees. So then you go outside and you're just melting. You walk in here and you're freezing. It's not good.
Now, before we start talking about serious things, are you Sun Devil or Wildcat?
Sun Devil all the way.
Scott, you baited me.
I did.
Totally
walked right into that one. Richard, Christine, in case you don't know, went to U of A.
Yeah.
So I have heard that. Mm-hmm.
Feel good that we are outnumbering him.
Oh, please. You'll be fine.
Christine, tell everybody who doesn't know a little bit about what you do right now and what Aspireship is and what your role is.
Sure. So we're just coming up on our 1 year at the end of the month, the day before Halloween. We launched this startup. And really what we do is we take people that are interested in getting into technology, specifically SaaS, sales, full cycle selling. And we provide a course that's free to them if they'd like to learn this. And if they can successfully complete and pass the course, then we introduce them to hiring partners on the other side that are more concerned with capability and aptitude and also characteristics and who they are from an attitude perspective rather than having the perfect resume. So we kind of have an interesting two-sided community that we're always working with, people that are candidates, teaching, training, helping them understand, and also helping them understand if this is not for them as well, which we do a lot of that as well.
So,
yeah, go ahead.
So what are the things you're uncovering there? Because I think it's interesting that, you're taking sort of an opposite-ish approach to this, right? To sort of help them really kind of, Scott was really good at this in interview. He'd be like, so what do you really want to do? And they would say something. He'd be like, why aren't you doing it? And people would end up in tears. They'd be like, oh my God, nobody's ever supported me. How are you doing that? Like, that's great. Like, what kind of things are you like, you shouldn't be doing this. You should probably do this. Like, what does it look like?
So the coursework is just a foundational course. It is some sales methodology, but it is also a lot of kind of like real talk. So the format is a little different. It is we interview different people in different roles about specific topics. So the first class is with 3 reps that have gone from pretty much kind of like SDR all the way up, and they're all in different roles, and some strategic, some enterprise, some SMB, one of them is still there. And so really understanding like, what does a day in the life really look like? And that's probably the longest course. We put it right up front so people understand, what is this job first? And we get a lot of drop off after that. And we go back and ask like, hey, why didn't you do more? What happened there? And they're like, yeah, I realized actually I don't think that sounds good at all. And that's good. We'd rather people know what it is. We also have created inside of the platform some practice projects, which are role plays. And then at the end, there are 3 role plays and they're consistent. So we're training them for predominantly a transactional environment. So a bubble up, kind of an old lead, a new maybe demo request, and then we're going into what we would think of as a decision call. And of course, the prospect comes back with a bunch of stuff that they didn't cover. So can they handle those things in product? Right. So they're, you know, we're also seeing, can they be technologically savvy? Yep. Do they know how to communicate? If they're having trouble, how do they communicate with us? Is important in those things that are all showing us whether we think these people would be a good candidate or not.
So what advice could you give to those people? Not that we wouldn't want them to come and use you for your service, but what are the things that you're helping someone uncover to make them go, I don't want to do this? Like, what are these tasks you're assigning to them, knowing that it's meant to weed people out? Like Accounting 101, I had 600 people at U of A on that, right? And it was designed to be hard and sucky so they could weed out the people who didn't want to be accountants, which technically I already knew before I went in, but I had to prove it to them that I sucked at it. So what are the things that you're helping them to dispel?
So I think some people don't, we see kind of two main, maybe three personas that come through. People that are very new to sales, have, you know, just dabbled in it a little, but want more understanding it. Maybe they've just been, they're like, you know, kind of somebody told them they got to get to gab, you got to get into sales. One of these things where they're, you know, they're just very new to it. The other we're seeing a lot of is people that have been in sales roles that have done other things that have not been a technology enabled sale or a SaaS sale. And so they don't know what it's like. And I, you know, had the experience, and I know you have as well, Scott, you know, where you're hiring lots of people and you hire personas that look similar, and you're going like, why did these 3 work out and these 8 not? And they all kind of, you know, maybe there were similar backgrounds. I mean, I hired people off of Cutco, and I hired, you know, teachers, and I hired different, you know, I would try different things and different hiring processes. And a lot of times those ones would get in and say like, oh my God, dialing and emailing and doing all of these things, that's a lot of different things I wasn't thinking I'd be doing during the day. You know, a lot of sitting, a lot of listening, a lot of, you know, just they don't understand sometimes that day-to-day work, that what that actually is. And even though you try to tell them what it is, you know, you're going to have different things that you're going to have to do, emailing, updating CRM, you know, making a lot of dials, making lots of calls, talking to people if you don't love talking to people and being on the phone. And I think a lot of people just have a different sense of what sales is, and they kind of feel like it's a little bit glamorous and don't really understand those things. And I think, you know, we do a pretty good job in there of trying to explain what it really is and then having them do it. So now try to have a conversation, have a role play. It's static. So if you don't follow directions and follow the prompts, you're not going to do well in the conversation. And so it'll be a little uncomfortable, which again, part of what this is all about. We're all testing and trying and falling on our face all the time.
So I look at your background, and you've got a great sales background, which I want to ask, you know, some questions about your experiences in sales, but everything you've done has been around people, it looks like, right? And I wouldn't even call it the HR space. Like it's really about professional development kind of stuff. How did you choose that, right? Like that's not necessarily, I don't sort of see that, but maybe it's because I'm not passionate about it, right? You know, Scott hates people, right? He doesn't really like people, so I know he doesn't. So.
He does not. I mean,
I got a text here that says, "Hey, like Scott, I'm giving you."
He has evidence, Christine, that I had a moment where I did not like people very much. He has evidence.
And he just texts me and he goes, "I hate people." So, but what is that about it? What is it that drew you to that part of the sales world?
Mm-hmm. You know, I kind of always have been in sales, you know, so did insurance early on and then owned my own business. And I think that's where it really started to matter to me, where I started to understand that it is people, it is connecting, and it is doing more than just schlepping something. And it was a retail furniture store for baby furniture. And so I was having these moments I had these like really defining moments with moms to be. I had some really sad moments, you know, where like people will let you into their lives in a very interesting way if you were really just being yourself and offering something, you know, in kind of a value exchange that makes sense for everybody. And that's really where I started cluing into this is a people business. And then because that, you know, kind of failed and we had to close it right around 2009-10 when it was getting really kind of ugly for everyone, you know, freight tripled and it became really difficult. And, you know, I actually took a job at a company that specialized in serving small businesses. So I came in knowing like I've done a small business. I probably understand some of that pain and realized that the sales process was the same, just looked a little different, but was the same, you know? And so then I started really realizing that this is all about connecting with the right people with a solution that makes sense for them. And yeah, that's kind of like been my jam the whole time.
So how did you even get into sales? Were you, you know, the young lady who always had, you know, selling candy or a lemonade stand as a kid? Did are mom and dad surprised that you went into sales? Not at all. Like,
you know, I thought I was going to go to law school. So I kind of grew up thinking, and then also kind of looked at ASU, just say that again. I, you know, looked at.
Everyone makes mistakes, Christine. It's okay.
I hated math. So in true, I think sales fashion, I looked at it and was like, what is the degree where I have to do the least amount of math? And it was like a criminal justice kind of justice degree. And I was like, oh yeah, I kind of was thinking about law school anyway. And so I've always been just somebody that can argue and chat it up. And I thought this would be really interesting. And then was a little disillusioned, got like a part-time job at an insurance office that was kind of a district office, and ended up training a whole bunch of these insurance agents just because I kind of grasped it pretty well. And so didn't even know what I was doing. I was in college, you know, and they didn't tell me sales process or anything like that. They certainly weren't teaching the insurance agents that. What? And it was boring, you know.
What's the best argument you ever won with your mom and dad?
Let me think. You know, it was to get our first dog. So that, yeah,
that's a pretty big win right there.
That is it took my kids 3 years to get that out of us.
Yeah, I was 12. I was 12 when we got our first dog, and we were in an apartment. I mean, it was like in Philly and it was just a thing. And we found a small dog. So that, I mean, we went into all the details around it, and my sister and I kind of created a little pitch for it and the whole thing, and presented it multiple times. It got better every time, but that was probably my best one.
That's like pitching to a VC. That's like pitching to your customer. Like it's all rolled into one, right? Like there's a ton of competition against the status quo of doing nothing, right? Like that's probably the ultimate sales, and you're one of the decision makers.
I had to promise to do all the fulfillment called picking up all the dog shit. Like I had to do all that down the road too. So I had to make sign my life away, which we all probably have done once or twice too.
That's funny. Christine, did you know that you were going to go back to starting your own business? I mean, I don't think people realize, but you were a head of sales for like 8 years, 8 years in between running your own retail store, like you mentioned, and starting Aspireship. I mean, 8 years is a long time to be in software sales, leadership, at some really well-known, you know, companies, Infusionsoft, MindBody, like those are big companies in the Scottsdale market for sure. Mm-hmm. Did you know the whole time that at some point you were going to go back and start something yourself, or did it just come out, you know, come on suddenly, like, oh, this is it, I really want to do this?
You know, I've always been just so enamored with the entrepreneurial spirit, and also I just really respect it. So, you know, I think once you've done it, and I mean, retail is hard, and you add on top dealing with hormonal women. I mean, this is like a whole nother level of when we have to order furniture, and I told you it was going to take a little time, and it took the same amount of time I said, and that wasn't okay. You know, so really, like when you're in a space where you're learning about people like that, then you just, I mean, when I go get my vacuum cleaner fixed, man, I just think like, wow, this is hard. You know, I really understand how hard it is. So I think in my core, I always thought I could do this again. Because I believe in it. And I just think of all the things I didn't know then, you know, if, like, oh God, I just like complete, like, you know, it's kind of bullshit to say like the economy tanked us, because I mean, me and my business partner made bad decisions. We tanked us, you know, and yes, freight went up, and yes, all this other stuff happened, but we were just flying by the seat of our pants a lot of the time.
Can you share one or two of the bad decisions that you know, in hindsight would have done differently?
Totally. Yeah. So I think, we made decisions about not investing in certain things. Like we were doing some of the way we were receiving things wrong, and just like little things like that, where it was like, the functionality, because I came into it, she had a business there, and then we kind of, you know, I bought into it, and then we expanded, changed the branding, really took on some different things that were interesting, but we didn't do like that. She had never invested in like an accountant, like beyond the, you know, the one that does the quarterlies, but somebody like to be watching this stuff all the time. So when margins started to shift, it wasn't cluing in the right way fast enough. So it's things like that where we didn't make those investments, and having those other people that are so much better at it than we are. I mean, that is one thing for sure I would have changed, for sure, is making sure we had more resources and invested in those resources earlier on.
Yeah, you mentioned a couple minutes ago, you said the word community, and you're a big part of the Thursday night sales community, and so many people, I think, are coming to you and Aspireship, being a part of I think it's a community that you're building there, and what you're putting people through. How are you seeing the people who are on the market right now? How are you seeing them come together as their own community to try to help each other land jobs? And what part do you and can people like Amy and me and Richard continue to play in that community?
Yeah. So I think one of the things that's great is I'm seeing people encourage each other in a way that is not necessarily just what people want to hear, but also what they need to hear. You know, like for instance, when you all, especially in Thursday night sales, give insights as to when you show up this way, when you're doing this online, when these things are happening, these are blind spots sometimes for people that I don't think they even know. And it's not that they're, you know, trying to be this way, but they don't even understand how they're being perceived. And so I love that in the community, people feel safe enough to ask questions around, hey, could you take a look at this for me? I mean, I'm seeing people help others with my LinkedIn profile, or I see people going, hey, I just heard of this opportunity that's not for me, but you mentioned something like that, or I heard it on Thursday night sales, and that you were looking for something like that. And I'm loving that, because we're listening with a different ear, not just for us. And I'm seeing that in other people. They're not just listening for themselves, they're listening for everyone, which there's like a magic there that doesn't normally happen, because we're kind of just naturally self-interested most of the time, especially when we're on the market looking. So I'm really loving that. I think that's huge. And continuing that conversation, fostering that conversation, making space for it. And also, you know, you guys are great at giving feedback. I think we're all trying to give feedback when asked and being open.
Why do you think that's changed so much? Aside from, like, COVID's a big piece of this, but communities definitely have been around for, you know, the last couple of years in sales. Mm-hmm. And even deeper than the communities, people are way more willing to share. Yeah. Scott and I've talked many times where it's like, I can't tell you how I hit my goal. I'm not going to share with you what my business plan was, or my job description, or my compensation plan. Like, I would never share a compensation plan with another company. Like, oh my God, that's terrible, right? Why do you think that shifted? What have you seen? Because you work with people at this sort of a slightly more intimate and emotional level. Mm-hmm.
Well, I think I mean, yes, I think that we can't argue that COVID hasn't had it's a huge part. However, I think we've all been missing something, where we've all had this scarcity mindset, and I've been one of them. You know, Scott and I have talked a little bit back and forth, especially on some of his posts when Scott, you're talking specifically about like how you used to manage before and how like these things, it like wounded me because I'm like, yes, I remember those moments, you know, where I was literally like just hammering my team about where we needed to be and, you know, pushing them till midnight because we could hit Australia. And, you know, I think that it started to shift. I will say one, because like labor laws and things shifted. I mean, this is just me keeping it super real. I mean, which frustrated me to no end because I'm like, why? Look, salespeople work when they work. Like, you know, this is what it means to be a salesperson. But also that did cause some conversation around, is this best? Is this healthy? Can we, you know, do these things? We started seeing more people taking short-term disability here and there because they were so tapped out, stressed out. And I was seeing that too. And I think it's all kind of culminated to be in an interesting time where we're going, again, do we have to dominate and crush each other? Do we have to do these things? And there's a little less, I know I'm a little bit more sensitive to what teams I join, what board members I'm going to be talking with. You know, I'm going to be a little bit more selective about what, who we partner with, because that kind of thinking sometimes causes for unnatural behavior to happen in the business that is not sustainable and not scalable. It's kind of like, you know, putting a lot of paint, carpet, and saying it's good when we need to redo the plumbing. And we all know we need to redo the plumbing. We're just trying to get this thing by, you know.
You think that back in the day, because I was certainly this way. Scott was probably this way, but he was really good at hiding it. He has a good poker face. That you knew you really shouldn't be pushing a human that hard till midnight. Like, did you, you know, or did you really think, no, this is okay? Like, you know, because for me, and I was scared to say anything or was scared to make the change, like I think a lot of people, I think I knew, I just didn't want to admit it.
Well, I think I justified it because I'm like, they're making good money and they're like, they don't, you know, if you're at goal, you don't have to be here. I don't care, you know, as long as you're doing what you need to be doing. But if you're not, and you're not here, we're probably gonna have a different conversation come the first of the month. So, you know, and that's the part for me where it, yeah, it was hard, especially like around holidays and stuff. That's where I was like that was where I would really struggle. Like having my people come in, you know, it was just tough, man.
Did having kids change your leadership style at all?
My kids were around for all of that. So I would like to say they changed me and made me into a softer, gentler human. And
I ask this question right now where I can literally hear my 12 and 10-year-old boys fighting in the background. So just for context.
So I will say that I think I'm a better leader for having had kids. Like I learned so much from them, but also understanding that like this way, the way that maybe we had done it before is not always going to be the best way. And air cover only gets you so far. And if you do it on the backs of people, like that doesn't feel good.
Yeah. There was a fake sense of permanence when I first got into sales leadership about what I was able to do and the hours that I could work and how hard I could push myself and things like that. And that shatters and goes away very quickly, or did for me, when I had a baby and I'm up all night dealing with this baby, and then I have the second baby and I'm trying to sort all these things out while still doing all the work. It's like, dude, I can't stay up till 1 o'clock in the morning anymore working on these reports. I can't be in the office till 11 o'clock on the last day of the month trying to close deals. And, you know, when I'm 27, 28 years old, I did not have the empathy or the understanding to understand what older team members of mine who had kids already were going through.
Yeah.
Right. And so it certainly had an impact on me. That's why I was curious if it had an impact on you.
I know it did impact. I think for me, it became more internal, saying like, I don't think I'm going to do this anymore. This doesn't work for me. And being able to have the freedom to say, I wasn't blaming it on my kids or those things. Cause I'm telling you, my kids came with me. Black Friday, my kids were in the office with me. That was just, we never did vacations near the end of the month. We never did, we all do that. Like, that's just kind of what we did. My extended family knew that. They're like, oh, she can't do it. That's the end of the month. Like, when your extended family understands that, like, it's just not going to happen because it's the end of the month. I'm like, this seems like this might not be healthy, so kind of taking a little bit of a breather there.
Yeah, particularly even in the startup world, like you don't get the Monday holidays. Like I remember, it's like you maybe got Labor Day and Memorial Day, right?
I can remember Janet going, it's Columbus Day. Don't you have Columbus Day off? I'm like, I don't have fucking Columbus Day off. What are you talking about? No.
I still have that from this week. Like, it's like, why are you working? It's Monday. The boys have off of school. I'm like, oh, I didn't know. So.
Yeah. So that's a really interesting point, because that was something that we decided very early on with this business that we would do. So any federal holiday, any holiday that a mom or a dad would have to figure out who the hell is going to watch their kids, we have off. And so we just started it that way. And also, we know, I did different things where it's like, if we push really hard at the end, so if you work for me from, essentially Christmas until New Year's, we did all kinds of things to get that end of the year really strong, that strong push at the end. But nobody wants to be off. I'd be like, I'll give you off the first week of January. Who wants to be off the first week of January? Right. Your family's all off that. So we actually, for this company, for Aspireship, the last day of the year is the day before Christmas Eve. And so we will just push until then. Yeah. And then we all take off together, because you know how it is when somebody's there and somebody's not, and all the other things going on. You can't relax. You can't relax.
Yeah. I've done that for years now. Just shut it down, like right before the last few days before Christmas, and then until the end of January. And it's like the people who want to still work will still find a way to work. Yep. Right? You're not really losing that much, right?
In fairness, Scott owes me a lot, because I go through the calendar because of the podcast, and I will go in and put every Monday holiday. He still works through it.
Because I'm oblivious to it.
Right. And I'm at least doing it because I know it's a long weekend. I think now that you have the lake house, Scott, you're probably going to be appreciative of the fact that I've done this. It's like, oh yeah, Richard made sure I don't have anything on Monday. I hope so.
This is how clueless I am. I just, did this anti-racism chat the other day. And so I was chatting with Dwan Brown about coming on the podcast. And one of the dates and times that I sent him over, turns out it was Thanksgiving Day.
Right. Standard Scott. He's like, blocked that on his calendar. I know I did.
He's like, that's Thanksgiving. I'm like, oh yeah, that's not going to work. Sorry about that.
He did that. I'm like, hey dude, this is the Monday of Thanksgiving week. Like, I'm not saying I'm not going to do the podcast, but come on.
That one, I'll still push for that one. We'll see who.
I want to shift a little bit. Because I think with the relationship I can go here, and if it's too much, pushback. But you've come up as a woman in sales and in business in the 2000s, right, for a few years now, and we all know the bullshit that exists. And do you have daughters, or do you have sons, or both, or what do you have?
I have sons, 2 sons.
You have 2 sons. So, based on your experience, so one, I'd love to hear how you've handled those experiences, and where it is. But because of those, how do you also raise your kids to not be those guys, right? Because I know we have a lot of parents who listen to this, and I think it's super important. And so we'd like to go down this path if you're
I'm happy to. Yeah. So I think I was really fortunate to have a few very good sponsors, and I'm going to differentiate between like a mentor and a sponsor, because I think that's important in this context. So kind of when I worked at the insurance world, and I was very young, teaching typically, just be honest, white men who wanted to own their own insurance agencies, how to sell. I had multiple moments that were completely ridiculous and utterly humiliating. And his name was Joe Basilis. He was the district manager at the time. And I remember this one time, I'm sitting here teaching a training, and an agent literally walked over to me and was like, can you, I don't like any of this sweetener. I mean, completely interrupted me. I don't like any of this sweetener. I only like the pink sweetener. So can you go figure this out, and get me the sweetener? I'm sitting here what is happening right now? And I think you're muted, Scott. I can't hear you. Oh, okay. So that happened. And I came out and I'm like, so one of my tells is when I get pissed, I turn really red right here. So I actually had to start, when I would go to executive meetings and things, I would wear just so I could, so that I could maintain that I wasn't pissed, but even thinking about it gets me hot. I said, this asshole literally and I was trying to figure out what to say, because I was, I think it was about 2021, and he actually he called one of the other guys over, and he said, let me give you money. He gave him $20 bill. He said, buy as much sweetener as you can with that $20 bill. And the guy came back, and he has, he has just boxes and boxes of this sweetener. And he walked in and he just dumped it right on this guy's, on the table right in front of him. And he's like, don't ever. And he just laid into him. And you know what? That was the first time when I thought to myself, yep, this is going to be a thing. This will be a thing. And you know what? It takes other people like that saying, this is my office. You won't treat anybody like that. And you're certainly not going to treat her like that. And, it was so important for me to see that good men that are not afraid to mix it up when something's wrong right in front of them. And I think that happened really early for me. And then when I actually was at Infusionsoft, my boss at the time, phenomenal, so smart. His name is Aaron. And he was such a good sponsor for me too, asking me, he was like, Christine, I know I had only been there a few months. And he said, I need two things. I need somebody to figure out sales enablement. And I was like, what's that? I didn't even really know what it was. And he said, he explained it, and I was like, that sounds so boring. And he's like, or number two, I need somebody to be kind of a strategic thought partner for me. And would you do that with me? Be an executive assistant? And I was like, I'm not a secretary. But he said, I want you to trust me. I'll teach you. And I'll do all this with you. And I don't think like you. You're a people person. I need that side. And I took a chance. That was a really big chance for me, because I had owned my own business. I was really wound up about it. And you know what? He was awesome. And he presented me with opportunity after opportunity. And I would say, no. I ended up doing the enablement role, building a team, and then, eventually took over the direct sales floor and the enablement side. And I think to myself, he asked me many times, you should do this. This is what you need to do. This is what you're doing anyway. And I was like, but he kept pushing me to really step in and do those things. And trusting that and understanding that there are people and great advocates, men and women, that will sponsor you through that, seeing that, knowing what to ask for when it becomes there. I mean, these are the things that I didn't know early on, but man.
I want to hear how you talk to your kids, but I do also want to dig in. How do you define a sponsor versus a mentor? I have not heard that phrase till you said it, and I was really, I have a vision in my head.
Sure.
Really important, because I think we think mentorship and we're afraid to ask for it sometimes.
Yes. So from the way I think about mentorship and the way that I enjoy mentoring others and have enjoyed a mentor relationship is somebody that's very regularly meeting with me. We know our goals together. I am showing up as the mentee with things that I'm working on, and the mentor is helping me get there as far as learning, development. Maybe it's around my specific competency and skill set in the role. Maybe it's around my executive presence, so we've got things that we're working on. That's how I think about mentorship, in that we both have those things happening and we're both coming to the table with that together. A sponsor, in my mind, is someone who, because he helped me a lot. He did a lot of things, but what he really did was he, you know, in when you're at the table in the room at the executive table and you say, no, Christine can do that. Nope, that's who should be leading that priority. I mean, and consistently pushing me in front of other people to say, no, she can do that, you know, and leading almost a large department of predominantly men, you know, she can do that too. And I kept saying, no, I don't think I want to do that. I don't know if I can do that. You know, we're $100 million company with 60% of the revenue. Like, it's a lot, you know? So, and I knew what it was. So, yeah, but he consistently sponsored me in front of other people that where the decisions were being made. My name was being brought up in a way that he was advocating me to the front.
So talk about translating that into boys, right? Like I've got 2 boys. Scott has 2 boys. You know, what are you teaching kids about women, about how to respect them and open doors, or, you know, whatever it is, the chivalry?
Couple of funny things. So, like anything, I think, you know, there are blind spots for when they're little, you know, they're just blind spots. And I'll say my 2, I started working on them a few years ago on noticing things. I said, like, hey, if I'm struggling with the groceries, like, you got to notice that. Like, look around, what's happening? Like, I'm trying to carry this in. This is not, so I didn't couch it as being like a chivalrous man, right? I was saying, like, this is the right thing to do. If anybody's struggling, do it.
Fair enough.
And if you, like, yeah, and if you're struggling, Richard, I'm probably going to grab a bag too and help you in. But like, starting to help them notice things. So I actually started paying them for it. So, so every time they would, every time they would notice something, like I would see them like hold the door open for, you know, a lady at the grocery store or do something like this. Like, they started seeing opportunities, and I never told them. I was just like, hey, I appreciated that. You're noticing, and I'm going to give you a little something for it. I have no idea if this was bad or good, but I was trying to reinforce the behavior that I wanted from them, that they never knew when it was going to happen, but it actually caused them to be more mindful. And, you know, obviously that was just for a little while that we did that, probably around like when they were like, it was probably like 9 and 11 is how old they were actually at that time. When I was like, I really appreciated that. Here is $1. And every time they helped me with my groceries, they didn't get $1, just occasionally, you know,
like
so
$1. Like, that's it? That's all I get for opening the door? Like,
well,
you know.
I mean, we also do chores a little different in my house too. Like, I actually have, like, when they were little, I had lists of chores and they could choose based on what they wanted to make. So dog poop pickup was $2, dusting was 25 cents. And so we would talk through, I'm like, look, we just do things a little different here. I don't want to do the dog poop pickup, so I'll pay you a little more to do it. And I will tell you that like, you want to dust, dusting can only happen once a week though. So you're not going to dust every day and get 25 cents. So I just kind of created this chore list where they could choose how much money you want to make. It's got to all be done. And I will tell you, it was a proud mom moment, proud sales mom moment. My 8-year, he was 8 at the time. He came back in and he goes, it's hot and I just got bit by ants. I'm going to need more money for that dog poop pickup. And I was like, okay, how much more? He said it was at that point $2.
Great.
He said $3. I was like, $2.25. He goes, Mom, he whips up his like pants. He shows me the ant bites and he's like, $2.50. I'm like, okay. And I was so proud. I just had like one of those mom, you know, he's like breaking my heart with the ant bites, you know?
That's fantastic. That's fantastic.
I know that you are super passionate about getting more women into sales. I know that you have an upcoming event. It's like 8 women on one panel, I think 8 or 10, something like that. How are you coaching and teaching some of your contemporaries and some of the women who are more junior than you to find some of these, you know, advocates, sponsors, mentors who are men? Like, what questions should they be asking, and like, how do they figure out a red flag that no, that's not the right kind of person for you? What are you doing there to guide them?
So one of the things I always think about is, what do I want to learn in this next experience? So that's how I actually kind of tell people to like pick mentors, kind of saddle up. Sponsorship is a little different because somebody really has to believe in you, and that's not as like back and forth. Like it's a little bit different. It's a little more one-sided, if that makes sense in my mind. Mentorship is different. And so when I think about that, I often tell women, okay, you're thinking about this role, or you're thinking about, I want to be this by 40, by 35, I want to have this title and all these different things. And I would switch that and say like, okay, in the next year, what is it you want to learn in order to do what? Because a lot of times I don't think,
in order to do what is really important there.
Yeah, what are we trying to do? And sometimes we don't know what role. Sometimes we're not clear. If you would have told me when I was a sales rep that I would have been, leading the direct sales org in just a few years, I would have said, nope, not me. That's not it. I wouldn't do that. But like, if you tell me and ask me like, what do you want to learn? I could have articulated that pretty easily. And that directionally, I think, helps figure out the type of individual that you might want to ask to be a mentor. Yeah. Also ask, if you have the opportunity and you're in a situation where you need more guidance and need more help, ask, hey, would you invest in an executive coach for me? Would you invest in, I have had that gifted to me, and I've really, really benefited from those conversations. So I think it's about forward thinking. It's asking for what you want in a way that makes good sense, and also showing that there's some ROI there, especially if you're going to ask them to pay for something like a coach. Here are the things that I'm going to be doing, et cetera. That's
also good coaching for any of the male sales leaders who are out there listening, because it's a different way of framing the question. And this, in order to do what part, I think is really relevant, right? And I don't think enough sales leaders ask the question differently based on who they're talking to, right?
Sure. Yeah.
We've got to wrap up here in just a minute, Christine, but we like to end every show by saying, how can we help you? Is there anything that we can do for you? Anything you're working on that you want to kind of push out there and publicize a little bit, whatever it is?
Thank you. I appreciate that so much. First of all, I really just love everything about the community that I think we're all building together. Thursday Night Sales is just my favorite. It's tonight. I love it all the time. And so appreciate it. And I think the best way is just when you hear people that are looking, that are questioning, I want you to feel like you can use us as a resource, because it is free for people to do within 30 days. We want them to feel a little pressure on that to complete it for obvious reasons, but it's really important that we are a resource for people. And I want to continue to be that way, despite what maybe other similar organizations do, where the revenue is a lot clearer and a lot more linear and a lot more fundable. And also, if you're know of sales leaders that are really open to, how can I get more people in here that might not have the perfect background, we have them. And so I'd love to talk about how we could partner together with the really good organizations with strong leadership.
I heard Scott mention an event about 8 women being on a panel. What is that? Where could people go check it out?
Well, last night we did a mom panel. I think that might have been the one you were talking about.
That's the one I was talking about. It was last night.
Right. I hope there's a recording for it, for the mom.
There is. I don't remember the podcast, or it was a live on LinkedIn. It was yesterday. And we all talked about being moms in sales. It was really interesting and insightful. And just, there's just a lot there that anybody, and there were a lot of guys in there too, talking about it. And being a parent is a tough thing when you're doing this work. So it's not just about, moms specifically, but this one was that topic.
We'll tell people to go hit you up on LinkedIn.
Okay.
So if they're interested in checking that out, because then you'll have one. And Christine, thanks so much. We've got to get a quick shout out to our October sponsors. Findem's our newest one that provides you with the best way to define what makes an A player in your org and get introductions to ready-made, interested A player candidates, even when they're not looking for a job. So be sure to check out Findem, as well as Lead 411, Gong, and Perception Predict. And we really appreciate everyone. And thank you so much, Christine, for joining us.
Oh, you guys are a blast. Thank you for having me. It was great. Bye.